It's day 63 of 118 days for the Tudors, and today is 1547. This is it, guys. Ding dong, the king is dead. In the weeks before his death, Henry had suffered a series of strokes. He was incredibly weak. He could barely lift a drink to his mouth. The smell of the room from his infected legs and feet had gotten pretty horrendous. But his physicians and most of the people around him were too frightened to tell him that he was about to die, because don't forget, that's treason essentially. If you're going to predict the king's death, you can get in a lot of trouble for that, and people have. So he needed to be told, because he needed to make his last will and testament. So eventually it was Anthony Denny, possibly also Archbishop Cranmer, who very gently explained to him what was going on. Very brave Anthony Denny. So on the 30th of December, he writes his last will and testament, and this obviously names Edward as his heir, followed by Mary and Elizabeth. So he's not had any of those other children he thought he may do. So we've got Edward, then Mary, and then Elizabeth, and then you've got the Greys and the Cliffords, who are descendants from his sister Mary. There is debate about whether or not this will is real, or whether or not it was made after his death. I'm not going to get into that now, because that's a huge debate. I once sat through a nearly 2-hour long seminar about that where people still couldn't agree. So that's a thing. We'll just be aware of that. So even though he's really unwell, he's still very much in charge. He's still greeting ambassadors. He's still, signing off on people that need to be executed. He doesn't want to name, so obviously Edward's still young, Edward's only 9 years old, he doesn't want to name a protector as such. He doesn't want to name a Lord Protector, one person to rule with Edward, for Edward, because he's aware that in the past that's caused a lot of trouble. So instead what he does is he puts down the names of exactly the team that he wants around Edward, and then kind of the outer team that will work for them. And it's 16 exact people, and then sort of 12 extras to assist. So he's very clear on exactly what he wants and who he wants, and people have kind of said that this is Henry's way to, carry on ruling even after he's dead. Maybe. Henry eventually dies on the 28th of January, so a few days ago, 28th of January at Whitehall Palace. His body is embalmed, it's covered in a gold cloth, and it lays in the chapel there with various gentlemen of the chamber sort of keeping watch over the body. So in the meantime, Edward Seymour, so that's Prince, now King, but for the moment let's call him Prince Edward's uncle, Jane Seymour's brother, takes Edward from where he's staying, reunites him with Elizabeth, where she is currently residing in Enfield, and tells the pair that their father has died, and they're recording as being very upset, crying and hugging each other. But that doesn't last all that long. By the 31st of January, he's arriving in London, and eyewitnesses report that he seemed very excited by the magnificent welcome that he got. I mean, he's still a 9-year-old boy at the end of the day, and he's suddenly centre of all this magnificent attention. Apparently there were even guns being saluted from the Thames. So he quite enjoyed this spectacle as he arrived in London. So it was tradition for him then to stay in the Tower of London until his coronation, because don't forget, at this time the Tower of London wasn't just somewhere for prisoners, it had royal apartments in there as well. So he's holed up there until his coronation. Despite what Henry stipulated, Edward Seymour is recognised by the team as being top dog. Okay, so he is going to be the Lord Protector, regardless of what Henry wanted. And on the 31st of January, the councillors accept that. They accept him as the one who's in charge. His official title being Lord Protector and Governor of the King's person. 1st of February, Prince Edward, not Edward Seymour, he sits in the King's chair of state, where he is greeted as the King of England. So he hasn't had his coronation yet, but obviously he's still king already. The 14th of February, we have Henry VIII's funeral, and Edward isn't actually part of this. He doesn't attend, so doesn't take part in any of the sort of ceremony around the funeral. On the 16th of February, we see Edward, so King Edward now, make Edward Seymour the Duke of Somerset, and that's now we quite often see him just referred to as Somerset. Not confusing at all. On the 19th of February, Edward officially enters London to just a spectacular array of celebrations. He's wearing white velvet and silver and gold. He's covered in diamonds and pearls. And then he has his coronation on the 20th of February. And the most kind of important, maybe part of the coronation are Cranmer's speeches and Somerset's speeches. And they talk about how Edward is a king by divine right, and essentially make a segue into kind of evangelical openings. They make it very clear at this point that this is going to be the start of reform in England. And at the celebrations after, there's a lot of anti-papacy propaganda going on. And one author wrote, the war with the Antichrist had begun. So 1547, Henry is gone. He is dead and buried with Jane Seymour, by the way. Sorry, I forgot to mention. We have a new king. He's 9 years old. And we have the Lord Protector, Edward Seymour, now known as Somerset. I will see you tomorrow for 1548, when poor old Catherine Parr isn't having the best time. See you then.